This is an excerpt from Chapter 4 of The Halfway Tree by Trunix. Chapter 4 excerpt at Mamere's house. The sun had been shining since they came to their grandmother's house, and Mamere called the men who worked on her yard to cut the grass while the rains were holding up. Therefore, Cherise and Danelle spent much of their time sitting outside on the house steps, watching them cut, trim, and rake the bush away. Cherise even asked her grandmother for ingredients to make her milky lollybags, so they had something cold and sweet to eat. It took an entire day for the yard to clean properly, but once it did, Cherise and Danelle took to playing outside, as Mamere's property was blocked around with a wall. Eating and playing every day when her mother and brother left felt like a small vacation in the middle of the school term. Cherise found she didn't miss school at all, but the pain of missing her father didn't go away. Sometimes, when she let herself think heavily on where he could be, she found she didn't want to play and would run off and hide in the yard when Danelle wasn't looking to be by herself. It was while they were playing outside the next day that Cherise found herself in one of those moods. She didn't even bother to hide and just rested out on the bare ground and stared up at the sky until Danelle finally got fed up of her sister ignoring her and wandered away, plucking off Mamere's flowers near the gate. Cherise had been thinking that if their father had been there, he would have built something nice for them to play with. She remembered how he had dismantled used boxes and made drums, swords, and armor for them in the past. Thoughts like that just made Cherise even sadder because they always took her to the same place in her head. What would happen if their father never came back? What would they do without him? She covered her face with her arm, feeling the tears biting at her eyes. She vaguely noticed Danelle's half-baby talk to the front of the yard. "Look, you want one?" she was saying. Cherise ignored her. She was just doing something with her imaginary friends. The little voice wasn't having it though. That voice inside her head, that her mother always told her she should pay attention to when it spoke. That voice sees things you can't see, her mother had told her early in September when she had first started to pick up Danelle from school. So listen to it when it talks to you. What it says is important. Even as Cherise lay out on the lawn grass in the cool shade of the fountain, that voice kept disturbing her thoughts at the back of her mind. "Are you sure Danelle is talking to her imaginary friend?" it said. "Who's at the gate?" "No one," Cherise answered. "There's never anyone around here." Which was true. All the time they had been there, only once someone had passed by the house on the road. It had been the mailman who had slipped some mail into the box through the gate. With the exception of the men who had come to clean the yard, once Mamere's neighbors left in the morning, the street was deserted during the day. However, the voice kept badgering her with the same question until Cherise dragged herself up off the ground and went over to the gate to find Danelle. She stopped short for a moment in surprise when she saw a child behind it on the road, crouched down low as if they were talking to Danelle. The child looked to be about her age and had on a large straw hat that covered most of its face. It had hold of Danelle's hand from through the gate. From where she stood, they looked incredibly dirty, and Cherise found herself grimacing at the thought of them touching her sister. The child suddenly stood up and reached for the gate latch, fumbling with it as they tried to open it. "Hey!" Cherise stopped them, coming forward. "You can't come in here. Where you come from?" Getting closer, Cherise could see just how dirty they were. They looked as if they hadn't had a bath in months, and their clothes were dinged and grey. There were caked dirt smudges on their hands and neck, and all they wore was an oversized, tattered t-shirt that hung down one shoulder. Cherise wasn't even sure if they were wearing anything underneath it, and glanced away a little ashamed. It suddenly occurred to her, though, that maybe the child was homeless and asking for food, and she felt sorry for them. In the hand that wasn't holding on to Danelle, Cherise could see one of Mamere's tiny flowers that Danelle had obviously passed through the gate to them. The child had looked surprised at the sound of Cherise's voice. Their tiny, crusted mouth frowned at her as she came closer to them. Cherise thought it was a girl from the mouth, but then she couldn't really tell. She could barely see the top of their face or hair from under the hat. "There is something not right here," the little voice told her. "Time to go inside." Cherise reached out and grabbed Danelle, pulling her away from the gate, but the child wouldn't let go. "You hungry? You want something to eat?" Cherise asked them, still pulling Danelle towards her. Cherise tugged harder, and even Danelle was getting irritated and started whimpering, trying to wrench her small hand away from the child. The child stayed latched onto her sister though, and just smiled quietly, showing their grip as they pulled Danelle towards them too. "Let go," Cherise said angrily. She needed to go outside and run this child, she thought, making to open the gate. But the little voice prompted her quietly again, alerting her to the gleeful smile on the child's lips when she reached for the thick iron latch. "Don't open that gate," the voice said. "Don't let them inside." Cherise hesitated, but the child was tugging harder at Danelle now, as if they were trying to pull her sister through the spaces of the iron bars in the gate. "Let go of my sister," Cherise said again, and grabbed onto Danelle's hand and the child's, trying to wrench them apart as Danelle started to cry. Cherise suddenly heard a scream that sounded more animal than human, and when she looked back at the child, the insides of their dirty mouth was exposed, the blackened stubs of what was left of their teeth in full view as the horrible song flew out. Cherise felt their hand let go of Danelle and pull forcefully out of her grip as the child backed away from the gate, clutching their wrist. Cherise immediately grabbed up Danelle and stepped away from the gate, watching the child closely. From where she stood, she could see what looked like a reddish burn mark on the part of the child's hand where she had grabbed them. They whimpered for a second, then lunged at the gate without warning, making both her and Danelle jump in fright. The child reached in and tried to pry open the latch again. There was no lock on the latch, and for a moment, Cherise panicked that they would be able to get in. The latch suddenly moved strangely as if it were alive, sliding inches up the gateway, away from the child's hands every time they got close to holding onto it. Frustrated, the child held onto the gate with both hands, shaking it, making it clang loudly. "What's going on out there?" Cherise barely heard Mamere say from inside. The child screamed angrily at them, their face stretching grotesquely as it did. As Cherise made to turn away, not caring anymore if the child was hungry and homeless or not, she caught sight of its feet. She stared at them, frozen in fear, halfway up the porch steps. "Hey, stop that!" Cherise heard someone shout from up the street. The child let go of the gate immediately, looking in the direction of the voice. They finally ran off across the road and down the street in the other direction.